Welcome back, players. I'm Jack with 36 Cancel, and this is Coco the Wise Cat. So after some painful boxes that you may or may not have seen me open, I'm back from therapy and I'm ready to do some deck techs. No matter how bad I did on my boxes, I still got more than enough cards to build the Overlord decks I wanted to put together. Now overall, there are a few ways to build Overlord and they each have their own styles, but today we're going to start off with one of the main deck structures that people think of when they think Overlord, and that's the standby deck with Shoutier's Resurrection, everyone's favorite climax. Overlord is a set with no shortage of good standby targets, and to boot it has a pretty good combo. When you combine the strong level 0 lineup that's featured in many Overlord decks regardless of style, the already good early plays in tech, and your choice of finisher, what you're looking at is a classic board presence and balls in standby deck. There are definitely different versions and variations you can build, even with the Overlord standby shell, but the iteration we'll be looking at today is red and green with a splash of blue at the top end. As we know, Overlord is a set that's delineated by many traits, some of which work together and some that don't. And there are also characters with combinations of traits that help them fit into multiple factions, like Momin having the traits Raven Black and Grotesque Race, allowing him to fit in with both the human crew and the Nazarick Guardians. Another example of that is Evil Eye, carrying both the blue rose traits and being blue in color, but also having the Grotesque Race trait. And since the Overlord standby shell is all Nazarick and Grotesque Race, Evil Eye, strangely enough, finds herself right at home here. It definitely looks odd on the outside, but once we dig in, we'll see exactly why these strange bedfellows made powerful allies. As always, we'll start at the level 0 and work our way up through the deck, and then we'll talk about basic strategy and how the deck plays. So no more introductory BS. Let's jump in. This is the Overlord level 0 shell with some added tech. While components of it change deck to deck, there are two major cards that appear in almost every deck at level 0. Let's kick things off with the ever-popular Nabe. Beautiful Princess Nabe is a base 1500, and if you have 2 or less stock, she gets plus 1500 power, and she's what a lot of people call a coin flip. This comes from her second ability, which is at the beginning of your opponent's draw phase, you reveal the top card of your deck. If you hit a level 1 or higher card, you can return her to your hand. The coin flip idea comes from that about 25 out of 50 cards in your deck are level 0 characters or climaxes, which count as level 0, so normally you'd expect about a 50-50 shot or a coin flip of this ability working. It's also a May ability, which means you don't have to carry it out. So Nabe lets you make plays based on the competition, which is always nice. Now coin flips are great abilities to have up your sleeve since not only can they save themselves to attack another turn or be recycled for other cards, but they also free up the stage if you're packing runners, which of course we are. We have Mare, Unreliable Nature Manipulator. Cool name, bro. On play, he also looks at the top card of your deck, but if you reveal a character, he gets plus 2k power, turning him into a 4k body the turn he's played. And of course, he's a mill runner, which is always good. Now, he does have to see a Grotesque Race or Nazarick character to run, but if we can step back for a moment, I can tell you a cool dynamic that these first two cards have going on. Nabe and Mare make appearances together in a lot of Overlord decks, even the one splashing for blue. This is, again, because of the complex way traits intermingle in this set. Most yellow cards that are popular to splash carry the Nazarick or Grotesque Race trait, which makes them intermixable with everything Nazarick on the red and green side, but a lot of them, like Nabe, also carry the Raven Black trait, making them work together with a lot of the blue package, since a lot of it keywords to Raven Black. So Nabe fits really easily into any shell. On the other hand, Mare, while being green and Nazarick, is also from the human race, not from the Grotesque race. It means he can hang out with the humans and the Nazarick characters. It's worth mentioning that a lot of the tech in blue that's keyworded is done so to Raven Black or the color blue, but it doesn't really matter, as by the time we're brainstorming and top checking, we're not really looking for level 0 runners. So because of how the traits interplay and how their abilities synchronize, this combo of Mare and Nabe work their way into many Overlord decks, and we'll be seeing them again soon. But anyway, let's move on to another popular tool at level 0 for Nazarick. Master of the Great Tomb of Nazarick, Ainz, 500 power and a lot of text. When he comes in, you can pay 1 and clock yourself, then top check 3 for a character and add it to hand. Is this the best version of the pay 1 clock 1 level 0 abilities? No, not by a long shot. But Overlord as a set does lack some of those more fundamental level 0 search, salvages, and Akatsuki engines, so this is the common solution that a lot of decks use to fill that need. Plus, he's a clock bomb, which is never bad unless your opponent is at 1-0. Anyway, those are some of the more common staples you'll see. Let's move on to some of the more toolboxy stuff. We have reason for the handicap Ainz. He's a 2k Climax Stitch Salvage, a standard profile. While not terribly notable on his own, having these as a one-of is a solid choice for most any deck, and Overlord lacks some of the more common discard outlets or single target searches that makes these less important, so having him in as a one-of is a good idea. It's the same logic with To the Most Beloved Albedo, currently English Weiss's most expensive vanilla 2k drop searcher. Very odd choice to put her in a box topper slot, but she's a discard outlet and a single target search, which helps us keep our hand the way we want to in lieu of having other tools. Now, a lot of Guardians both appear in green and red, like Albedo, appearing next in red with Nature of Floor Guardian Albedo. This is one of our main standby tools. When she comes in, you mill the top card of your deck, and then you choose a character and it gets additional soul equal to the soul trigger on the card put in the waiting room this way. And when you play a climax, you can return her to your hand and give one of your characters plus 1k until the end of your opponent's next turn. So this is really important for us. She helps give more soul to your characters since standby doesn't give you any and can put you behind in tempo. She also makes our characters bigger across your opponent's turn, and with the margins we're looking at, plus 1k could be the difference between a sliver of hope to climb over them and no hope at all. But one bigger thing she does is free up a spot on our stage so we can stand by without losing characters. Now, it's smart not to fill your stage with characters in standby anyway in most cases, but strangely enough, that's one of our aims coming up soon. But more on that later. For now, let's talk about the last card at level 0. Shoutier Crimson Red Battle Maiden. She's our Brainstormer, and she's got a pretty common but good profile. On play, you can bomb a character in your opponent's center stage for minus 500 power, and she's a tap self salvage Brainstormer. It's pretty much exactly what we want in this deck, so no need to dwell on it any further. So now that we've gone through the level 0, it's time to look at the level 1. 8 cards. I know, right? It's not a huge lineup, and there's a reason for that, but let's see what's in front of us first. Allure of Being an Uncle, Cocutus. 1/1, base 5500, and gets plus 2k if you have 2 or more other Grotesque or Nazarick characters, and of course he has Hand Encore. Classic standby target, a 1/1 7500 with Hand Encore. This is bread and butter, obvious stuff, so let's move right along. Next in the lineup, we have first to third floor Guardian, Shoutier. Base 3k, when she comes in you can top check, and if you see a Grotesque or Nazarick character, gets plus 2k until the end of turn, and she's a level 1 reverser, so she gets some power to swing over something and then still be a reverser on your opponent's turn. And she's free. It's another generic component to any standby deck, the level 1 tech that's free. It's also red, which is important since our primary color at level 1 is red. Seems like a strange thing to say considering the lineup, but bear with me. Lastly, we've got Guardian of the Throne Albedo, the set's 102k backup. Obviously, when your strategy is to rely on board presence for advantage, which standby does, you'll always want to protect it, and the 102k backup is the Honda Civic of that role. Overused, cliche at this point, and absolutely commonplace, but still baseline and reliable and competitively costed for what it delivers. So that's the level 1, and thus far we haven't seen so much as a climax combo. We're going to have to go to level 2 for that. What? A level 2 climax combo in my Wise deck? Well, maybe not so far-fetched looking at this lineup. It's probably one of the largest level 2 lineups in English, so let's check out what makes it tick. Resurrection Ritual Ainz, 2/1, 7k, and if you have 4 or more Grotesque or Nazarick characters, he gets -1 level in your hand. So that's how we're doing it. Yep, while it's technically a level 2 climax combo, you're probably looking to start using it at level 1, and the combo is that when you play Shoutier's Resurrection, Overlord Standby Climax in your climax zone, if this card is in your center stage, you can choose another character and stand it. Now, we all know how this is supposed to work. You play the climax, do the standby trigger, put a character on the stage, and then stand it using the combo. And with the Albedo Red level 1, as long as you move her up to the front row, you can make sure that there's an open slot to standby even if you play a full stage to get the Ainz out at level 1. This is classic standby. It's board presence and aggressive momentum, pure and simple. So now that we know the combo, why don't we talk about some more targets? 5th floor Guardian, Cocutus, 2/2, 6500, 2 soul, and he gets plus 1k for each other Nazarick or Grotesque race character. And when he direct attacks, you can choose a Nazarick or Grotesque race character in your waiting room and put it into your stock. He's absolutely massive, swings big, and punishes your opponent for forfeiting board. This level 2 Cocutus is an absolute staple in any Overlord standby deck. So what about this Evil Eye? Invisibility Magic Evil Eye is a level assist, which is helpful in keeping our big characters out of reach, but her second ability, which gives a blue or raven black character on reverse bottom deck, isn't particularly useful to us. But the truth is, we're running her because she's marginal utility, but mainly because she's blue. Our top end finisher is blue after all, and so are 4 of our climaxes, so we need some way to play her. If we need to put her behind our characters, that's not a bad option, but we really want her in our clock toward the end. And we'll talk about how she fits into our endgame in a bit, but first we need to cap out the level 2 with Breath of Mental Manipulation Aura. He's a 2/1 rest counter if you pay 4 and pitch a character, or just a 2/1 2500 backup if you don't. In this deck, it's very easy to build excess stock, and we don't have too much to spend it on, so a rest counter, even if expensive, fits perfectly into our deck, and that caps out our level 2. So let's talk about the level 3. As you can see, we've got 4 different cards, so let's get started. First up, Infinite Loyalty Albedo. Base 9k, plus 500 for each other Grotesque or Nazarick on your turn, 4 more early play, and a discard stock heal. Where would any good standby deck be without an early play like this to complement its existing strengths? After all, this is a board advantage deck, and nothing generates advantage quite like a 1-stock 2-soul early play. Common and solid profile, common and solid reasons to play her. But now let's talk about how we close the game. We're packing 2 secondary finishers. First, there's Endless Devotion Albedo. On play, she heals, and when you make a direct attack with her, you can pay 1, pitch 1, and burn 1. It's another way to punish your opponent for being smaller than you, which in standby, you're probably going to do. And a burn 1 on attack before swinging direct with 2 soul is kind of nice to potentially remove a climax before a bigger swing. Anyway, next up we have Energetic Beast Tamer Aura. If she's in your center stage, all of your Grotesque race and Nazarick characters get plus 1500, including her. And on reverse, you can pitch 2 characters to clock kick during anyone's turn. This is a very cheeky standby target, and once again, punishes your opponent for not being able to deal with the insane power. And with how much staying power your characters have, you should definitely have the hand size to support multiple clock kicks, and back her up to get that extra value. Now moving on to a primary finisher, this one's a bit different. Blue Rose Evil Eye is another healer, and she climaxes with a pants. When you place 5th tier magic caster in your climax zone and you have another Raven Black or Blue character, if she's in your center stage, you can choose one of 2 effects. Either you can choose 3 cards in your opponent's waiting room and shuffle them back into their deck, or you can pitch 2 cards from your hand and burn your opponent for X damage, where X is the number of climaxes in their waiting room. This is a pretty interesting dynamic that lets you adapt to the state of the game. If your opponent is nice and impressed, the burn option gives you a lot of opportunities to deal extra damage in small numbers to lock down a win, and if they're not, the reshuffle option makes it almost impossible for them to cancel. It's worth mentioning that if your opponent has no climaxes in their deck and they're close to a refresh, if you do the reshuffle ability twice or 3 times, it's pretty much a guaranteed kill. Evil Eye is a great tool to finish the game with, no matter how it ends up. It's no wonder that she's Overlord's most popular top end, and people splash blue for her even when it's a little tough to maneuver. But that's what we're here for, because now that we've done the deck list, we're going to talk about how to play it. And honestly, this deck is very much a solitaire build. All you really need to do is make smart plays on where to put things on your board and have a general sense of how much power your opponent can put out so you can play around it. Standby is a board presence deck in most cases, and this deck is absolutely no exception. Are you hyper concerned with what your opponent is doing? Not especially. You have big free bodies with big free encore, but what does this look like as a game plan? Well, even at level 0, this is a solitaire game. You're just using the coin flips and runners to preserve attackers and build resources in your hand and stock. Their power will kill a lot of level 0s on your opponent's side just by doing nothing. And Master Ainz is excellent to clock bomb away problematic targets. At the outset, discard aggressively for standby, and get as many good targets into the waiting room as you can with Shout here. Transition smoothly into the level 1 with a big hand and hopefully a 1/1 Calcutus already on the board. Remember, stage presence is your bread and butter, so push it hard when the opportunity arises. Now at level 1, you may be tempted to expend hand and stock to make sure you can do the resurrection combo and stand by a good level 2 to swing with that turn, but honestly, it's not nearly as important as keeping up compression and hand size. If you can put down a respectable front line and stand by a 2/2 in the back row without the 2/1-9s, go for it. Your characters at level 1 are still pretty scary, and this deck builds compression through abundance of stock and hand. If you don't need to put more characters back into your waiting room before you refresh, why would you? When you brainstorm or search, focus instead on grabbing your backups and the tools you'll need for later. Overlord doesn't have too many pinpoint searches, so be careful not to waste them. From here, the game is pretty much just riding on your board. Keep your stock packed, your hand big, and encore your characters when you need to. At level 2, putting down an Albedo and an Aura through early play and standby with backup support ready is an extremely tough to deal with strategy, but also don't forget to put blue in your clock at some point. Overlook that, and level 3 is going to be a bad time, but as long as you have blue in your clock, you'll be prepared. Standbying one Evil Eye and just laying down another if you have an Aura or an Albedo already out is pretty much all you need to do. Slam the climax, make your choice based on what your opponent's deck looks like at the time, and that's all you need to finish the game. There are some other minor notes here, like being careful not to screw yourself on colors, not running face first into an anti-change backup when it's going to hurt you, and staying smart with your resources, and this deck pretty much runs itself. If you like the idea of Overlord and lording huge power over your opponents, Standby Nazarick is going to be your jam. Alright players, that's about where we're going to wrap things up. Standby Overlord's a really cool deck, but there are a lot of others to get to teching, so it's time for me to go back to the drawing board and back to the secondary market to see if I can pick up more shinies. Sometimes the world is cruel, but if you're piloting Standby Overlord, you can be just as cruel and unforgiving as this unfair world we live in. And as always, thanks for watching. Peace.